Attachment theory is one of the most powerful tools to understand human psychology. It explains how we behave in relationships, why emotional closeness can feel uncomfortable, and why some people seem to constantly pull away from deeper connections. Avoidant attachment style often appears calm, strong, and independent on the surface, but underneath, there's usually a quiet fear, emotional distance, and a deep resistance to vulnerability. This attachment style shows up in two major forms: dismissive, avoidant. People who say, "I don't need anyone," but deep down they struggle to connect emotionally because they've never learned how to truly express their inner world. Fearful avoidant. They crave love and connection, but the moment someone gets too close, they start to panic. Trust issues, fear of rejection, and emotional overwhelm push them away from the very closeness they long for. But here's a deeper question. Why do so many people avoid talking about this? Why do we dismiss it or scroll past it like it doesn't apply to us? Maybe because a part of us is afraid it does. Today we're going to explore this behavior in detail, how it forms, how it grows, and how it silently affects the way we love. Because once you understand these signs, everything begins to make sense. It's possible that you'll see these traits in yourself, or in someone you love deeply. And if you do, that's where healing begins, not by blaming, but by finally understanding. Neglect from caregivers in childhood. Neglect from caregivers in childhood can give birth to avoidant behavior. And sometimes, neglect doesn't look like screaming or hitting. Sometimes, it's just silence, a mother who's emotionally absent, a father too busy to notice, a home where you learned, quietly and painfully, that your emotions don't really matter. You were just a child, but you learned too early that if you cried, you'd be called dramatic. If you felt scared, you were weak. And if you asked for something, you were a burden, so you stopped asking. You made silence your home, and that silence became the safest place to be, safer than love, safer than connection, safer than the risk of needing anyone at all. You don't call it avoidant. You just say the world feels overwhelming. You say people expect too much. You say you're not good at emotions or not built for love. But beneath it all is a child who once reached out, and no one reached back. Now when someone gets too close, you pull away. Not because you don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. You've hidden so much for so long, you don't even know what's real anymore. When someone tries to understand you, you feel exposed, anxious, unsafe, because you've survived by not being seen. That's what early emotional neglect does. It doesn't just teach you to be independent, it teaches you to hide, to avoid, to protect your pain by pretending it doesn't exist. So if you still find yourself pushing people away, if you shut down when it gets too emotional, if you feel safer alone than together, know this: you're not broken. You're just protecting a wound that was never meant to be yours in the first place. Trusting others is a weakness. Some people weren't raised in emotionally safe homes. They were raised in environments where vulnerability was punished, where emotional needs were ignored, or even mocked. And when that's the foundation, a child doesn't grow up learning that trust is connection. They grow up learning that trust is danger. Avoidant individuals are often shaped by these early experiences. They may have had parents who were physically present but emotionally distant. They may have opened up as children, only to be told they were too sensitive, too much, or dramatic. And slowly, silently, they internalized a belief that changed everything. If I rely on someone, I'll be let down. If I open up, I'll be rejected. So by the time they become adults, trust is no longer something warm and safe. It feels like exposure, like giving someone a weapon they can use against you later. That's why when someone gets emotionally close to them, they pull back. Not because they don't care, but because their body remembers what it felt like to be emotionally abandoned by someone they once trusted. Their nervous system becomes hyper-aware. They begin to overanalyze every word, every gesture. They look for signs of betrayal even where there are none. Because their mind has learned it's better to leave first than to be left. They don't just struggle to trust others, they struggle to trust themselves, because no one ever taught them how to feel safe in love. No one ever showed them that needing others is human, not weak. Their distance is not coldness, it's protection. It's years of emotional survival, built on a childhood that made them believe being independent is the only way to stay safe. Trust issues aren't flaws. They're the result of years of disappointment, emotional neglect, and having to raise your own heart. So if you're with someone like this, know that their silence isn't always apathy. Sometimes it's fear wearing armor. Hearts afraid of love. They were never taught that love could feel safe. What they learned, deeply, silently, and repeatedly, was that closeness always came with a cost. Growing up, every time someone got too involved in their life, it either ended in control, suffocation, or abandonment. So now, as adults, they protect the one thing no one could ever take from them, their freedom. It's not that they don't want love, it's that love feels like a trap. The more someone tries to get emotionally close, the more their nervous system screams danger. Because in their world, affection was never free, it always came with expectations, demands, or emotional debt. They were taught that independence equals strength. Depending on others, that was weakness. Being needed, that was pressure. So they learned to keep their heart guarded, their space sacred, and their connections just distant enough to feel safe. When someone starts caring too much, asking for consistency, or simply wanting to be part of their emotional world, they retreat. Not because they don't feel something, but because that something feels threatening. Emotional intimacy, to them, feels like losing control. They think, if I let someone too close, they'll change me, they'll want more, they'll take away who I am. So they hold tightly to their routines, their space, their solitude, not realizing that they're also holding love at arm's length. People often call them cold or selfish, but they're not. They're scared. Scared of becoming so entangled that they can't breathe. Scared of being responsible for someone else's emotions. Scared of being seen too deeply and then rejected. Their version of love is survival. Keep it light, keep it distant, keep it safe. And when someone tries to love them fully, they see it as a threat, not a gift. Because somewhere along the way, they learned that freedom is the only thing that won't abandon them. They pull away when you get close. It's not always taught through words, but it's trained early, silently, and consistently. From childhood, many avoidants grow up in environments where dependence is treated as weakness. No one sits them down and says, "Don't trust anyone," but that message is delivered in 1,000 unspoken ways. When they asked for help and were ignored, when their emotions were mocked, when vulnerability was met with silence or punishment, they began to learn that relying on others leads to pain, and so they trained themselves to survive by avoiding closeness. They learned to appear strong, self-contained, and unbothered, because in their world, needing someone meant exposing a weakness that could be used against them. As they grow, this belief silently embeds itself into their relationships. When someone starts to care for them, really care, their first instinct is not to lean in, it's to pull away. Their nervous system doesn't register intimacy as safe, it registers it as dangerous, so they detach, they go cold, they make the relationship casual. They claim they're just not ready. But the truth is, they were never shown what safety and love feels like. They confuse emotional intimacy with risk. They were raised in emotional droughts, so they don't recognize emotional nourishment when it's offered. They reject it, even when they crave it deeply. And the more you try to get close, the more they feel exposed. It's a defense, not a decision. Their withdrawal isn't about you not being enough. It's about their own system trying to keep them safe from a kind of closeness they never learned how to handle. If you've ever felt confused by someone who seems to shut down right when things are going well, understand this. They are not rejecting your love. They are protecting themselves from what love has always represented to them. Disappointment, abandonment, or control. It's not your fault. It's not your job to fix them, but understanding their fear might help you finally stop blaming yourself. Because at the end of the day, what you see as connection, they still see as a threat. And until they heal the environment that taught them that closeness is dangerous, they will keep running from the very thing they secretly want the most: real, secure love. We know that avoidant behavior is a complex and often misunderstood subject. If you felt a deep sense of recognition while watching this video, if it brought up memories, quiet heartbreaks, or lingering confusion, just know you're not alone. Many of us carry these emotional patterns silently, whether in ourselves or in the people we love. But awareness is the first step toward healing, and sometimes just understanding a pattern can bring the kind of clarity we've been craving for years. If you think this video could help someone else, someone who struggles with emotional distance but doesn't know how to name it, please share it with them. We would also love to hear from you. In the comments, let us know, have you ever recognized these signs in yourself or someone close to you? When did you first start to understand your emotional needs? If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. We talk about healing, attachment, emotions, and all the invisible threads that shape our relationships. Thank you for spending this moment with us. We'll see you again soon with more insights that speak to your inner world. Until then, take care of your heart.